Hello, parents and teachers. This video includes a description of a violent crime that happened over a century ago, but you may wish to consider reviewing the video before sharing it with your children. Previously, we looked at the watercourse at Weetalibah Crossing, where a natural floodway from the floodplains in Queensland is channeled down to New South Wales and intersects the Castlereagh Highway north of Lightning Ridge. The Weetalibah area has a few more stories to tell though. Let's start with the Castlereagh Highway itself.
And we're looking for the stones that mark the road as it previously was, the Castlereagh Highway. And it has moved, golly, I'm not sure how many meters to the north.
The highway originally deviated to the south, closer to the Weetalibah waterholes, but it was moved further north as a part of road maintenance over the years.
Look at this. Obviously, this is it. We were looking the other way, but that is it. That's the old road marker. Oh, I'm so glad we spotted that.
What's amazing about the old road is not just that remnants of it still exist, but that it's a piece of significant history for northern New South Wales. The original Castlereagh Highway, although it wasn't called the Castlereagh Highway until 1954, it formed part of the coach network back in the days of Cobb & Co. and similar coach companies.
And this was the site then of one of the coach change stations. The coach would have traveled and stopped every 11 miles. But there's one just out of Walgett. Then you came up to Gurlway, which is near the Bonanza Road that cuts over towards Castlereagh. And then we had one right outside of Lightning Ridge. And we had this one, the Weetalibah Coach Change Station. When you head on north towards Angledool then, there was one on the Gadooga Road that would have been the Bangat Change Station. It was near the old original homestead. And then, of course, you come into Angledool. The Weetalibah Hotel, I guess it would have been called, was established in the early 1890s by a fellow named Mussett. And he's actually buried here on the block, according to the information we have. He sold to the Becketts, a local family still, and they were out here in residence.
The Weetalibah Hotel has some interesting history of its own, including a bar fight in 1914 that led to the murder of a man by the name of James Henry Davidson. Most of this story comes from a first-hand account recorded by Albert Beckett, who was the son of the Weetalibah Hotel's licensee. James Henry Davidson was a 30-year-old man and a coach driver. He had driven the mail coach to Weetalibah on the night of June 5th, 1914. He arrived at about 2:30 in the morning and he stopped at the hotel there for the evening. Also on the coach that night was George Chun, who was travelling as a passenger. Now, I don't have a lot of information on George Chun, mostly because the newspapers back in the early 1900s were honestly pretty racist, and every article just describes George as a Chinese. Sometimes they actually included quotes that were attributed to Mr. Chun, which were written in a phonetically spelled out Chinese accent, which is pretty cringy. George did stab a man in cold blood, as we're about to find out, but I'm not defending him by any means. It's just that in 100 or so years we've definitely come a long way in the way we respect other cultures, you know? All I know about George is that he was 67 years of age, he wasn't a young man, and he was of Chinese descent. Anyway, James, George, Arthur Dawson from Lightning Ridge, and a police officer, Constable Massarid, were at the pub. They drank, and things got rowdy, as they do. George accused James of cheating him out of some money. George had been generously shouting drinks. I guess James didn't reciprocate. So over a matter of about 10 shillings, which is about $60 in today's money, there was an argument. James ejected George from the hotel, and then he retreated to catch his breath. Albert, the son of the licensee, the one who wrote all of this story down in his deposition, he did his best to calm James down, but eventually got the better of James, and James went to confront George again. The witness accounts say that James ran over to George, but he didn't hit him or really react in any way. James asked for a light for his cigarette, and he said, "I think I'm stabbed." He then fell to the floor and was carried to the bed in his room. He came to a few times over the course of the rest of the night and wanted to resume the fight with George Chun, as you do. But by 6:30 the next morning, James was found dead by Constable Massarid and Arthur Dawson. Chun freely admitted to the murder. He was taken into custody by Constables Massarid and Sheridan, and he was committed to trial at Tamworth Circuit Court. George was originally charged with murder, but the charge was reduced to manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 18 months in Tamworth jail with hard labour because he was considered to be a man of good character, and because he was provoked, and because he was under the influence of liquor. Somehow, I don't think 2 out of 3 would still count as a reason to reduce someone's sentence these days. Anyway, Wild West shenanigans at the Weetalibah Hotel back in 1914.
The place burned down in 1926, but the cattle yards and the horse stables and so forth remained in use for many, many years.
If you haven't watched it already, be sure to check out the previous video about the Weetalibah floodway for some extra history about this area. And you should also be sure to visit the Lightning Ridge Historical Society in Marilla Street, Lightning Ridge, to tour the historic miners' hut, century-old cottage hospital, and displays of Lightning Ridge and opal mining heritage items. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to IDU Curiosity on YouTube and following along on all of the usual social media channels. The links are in the description, and feel free to share this video or any others around with your friends. It helps me a lot. And thank you for watching.